So imagine this. You take a really rough idea, something you might have just scribbled on a napkin, and you turn it into a complete development-ready plan, all with the help of AI. Well, that's the bold promise of a tool called MINDMAP Builder IQ. Today, we're going to dig in and break down how something like this could actually work.
But hey, before we jump into the solution, let's really talk about the problem it's trying to solve. I mean, if you've ever tried to build anything, you know this feeling, right? You have this brilliant spark of an idea, but getting from that spark to a finished product, well, it can be a total mess. What does it really feel like when you try to build without a solid plan?
You hear it all the time, because it's true. It's like flying blind. You think you know your destination, but you've got no map, no instruments, no flight plan. You're basically just hoping you don't run out of fuel before you get somewhere, anywhere, close to where you want it to be. And this whole flying blind thing, it's not just a clever metaphor, it creates some very real, very painful problems. It really shines a huge spotlight on that massive gap between having a great idea and, actually getting it done without chaos.
Okay, so problem number one, and this is a big one, wasted time. You see, teams spend weeks, sometimes even months, writing these giant specification documents. And by the time they finally finish, the market's already changed, new ideas have popped up, and that perfect plan is already a museum piece before one single line of code gets written.
Then you've got the agony of costly rework. When the requirements aren't crystal clear, the design team is imagining one thing, the engineering team's building something else entirely, and marketing was promised a feature that doesn't even exist. All that miscommunication? It doesn't just feel bad, it's what blows up budgets and completely wrecks your deadlines.
And what happens to all those super important decisions that get made along the way? Poof. They just vanish into this black hole of lost knowledge. Was that key decision buried in a random Slack thread from 3 months ago? An email someone forgot to forward? When all that context is scattered to the wind, your team can't even remember why they made certain choices.
And all of this leads to the absolute chaos of scope creep. Without a clear, agreed-upon plan, the door is just wide open for that dreaded phrase, "Hey, can we just add one more little feature?" And suddenly the project's boundaries get all blurry, and it balloons into something completely unmanageable.
So, yeah, that's a pretty grim picture. But what if you could generate that clear flight plan almost instantly? And that's exactly where an AI-powered solution comes in. It's all about finding a way to transform those messy, raw ideas into a plan your team can actually build from.
The core promise of a tool like this is actually really simple: speed and clarity. It's a direct answer to that wasted weeks problem we talked about. The goal is to take you from a chaotic jumble of ideas to a super organized concrete plan in just a tiny fraction of the time.
And listen, we're not just talking about a simple Word doc here. The whole idea is to generate an entire suite of useful stuff. You get the big picture product requirements document, the why. You get the nitty-gritty technical specs for the engineers. You even get sprint-ready tasks that project managers can use right away. And remember that whole lost knowledge problem? By tracking version history, it creates that single source of truth everyone's always dreaming of.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty powerful in theory, but how does it actually work? Like, what do? Well, the process is basically broken down into a simple 4-step journey to get you from that initial idea to a plan your team can hit the ground running with.
The process itself is designed to be super simple. First, you just describe what you're trying to build. Then, and this is really the magic part, the AI acts like a seasoned product manager. It starts asking you smart, clarifying questions to fill in the gaps. From your answers, it generates the full set of documents, and finally, you just export everything and get to building with confidence.
Now, of course, any tool like this is going to have different plans for different kinds of users. And looking at the pricing tiers isn't just a sales pitch. Honestly, it's the best way to understand who this tool is really for, whether you're a solo creator just starting out or a full-on startup team.
You can see the progression here is pretty logical. The free plan is basically your test drive, lets you kick the tires on a single project. The solo builder tier is perfect for an individual creator. It unlocks unlimited projects and lets you export your specs. But that pro plan is where it gets serious for teams, adding integrations with the tools they already use, like Jira and GitHub.
And that pro plan, it introduces what they call superpowers. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is where it goes way beyond just writing documents and gets into actual strategic analysis. I mean, imagine an AI that critiques your technical architecture to find bottlenecks before you build, or a trade-off simulator that helps you weigh the pros and cons of different features. This is where the AI stops being just a scribe and starts acting like a true strategic partner.
All right, the features sound amazing, but talk is cheap, right? Does it actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at some proof from the field and see what actual users have to say about it.
So first up, we've got Sarah, who's a product manager. Her feedback goes right back to that wasted time problem we talked about. She says it cut their spec writing time from days down to hours. And, this is key, she was surprised by how well the AI actually understood the product context.
Next, let's hear from Marcus, a solo founder. For him, this thing is like a force multiplier. He says it's like having a whole product team in his pocket. And it's not just about the specs for him, it's about creating clearer plans that actually make his investor deck stronger. That's a huge win.
And honestly, this might be the most important piece of feedback of all. It comes from Emily, an engineering lead. Because let's be real, if the developers can't actually use the final output, then none of this matters. And she says, finally, specs that developers can actually use. That confirms it's bridging that crucial gap between the product vision and the engineering reality.
So, we've looked at the problem, the solution, and the proof from people actually using it. So for our last section, let's kind of zoom out for the big picture and wrap up with one final question. When you really boil it all down, a tool like this isn't just about making documents faster. It's fundamentally about building a bridge. It's designed to close that really dangerous, messy gap between having a brilliant idea and having the concrete, actionable plan you need to bring that idea to life. And that leaves us with a pretty big question for the future. As AI gets better and better at handling the how, the specs, the plans, the documents, what does that mean for our role, for human creativity? Maybe our job stops being about writing the perfect plan and starts being about asking bigger, better, and more creative questions in the first place. Definitely something to think about.